The lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel in Victoria Island, Lagos, was built to intimidate. The floors were polished Italian marble, cold pale and blinding under chandeliers that dripped crystal like frozen waterfalls. Porters in fitted white gloves moved silently between luggage carts and potted palms. The air smelled of leather and expensive perfume. Everything in that lobby had been carefully arranged to make a quiet but unmistakable declaration. This place is not for everyone. Adiz Okonkwo walked into the revolving glass door at exactly 11:57 in the morning, 3 minutes before her scheduled boardroom meeting was set to begin. She wore a simple Ankara blouse, deep orange and brown, the kind you find at any fabric market in Surulere, tucked neatly into a pair of plain black trousers. Her feet were in flat leather sandals. Her hair was pulled into a low bun with no pins, no adornment. She carried a small leather pouch, the kind that looked like it had survived several rainy seasons. Not a designer handbag, not a briefcase, just a modest thing pressed under her arm as she moved toward the reception desk. She did not rush. She never rushed. The receptionist, a young woman in a tailored blazer with a name tag that read Amaka, looked up from her computer screen, and her eyes did something almost imperceptible. They cooled. They dropped from Adiz's face to her blouse to her sandals and back to her face, performing that quick, cruel calculation that some people do without even knowing they are doing it. "Good morning," Adiz said. "I have a meeting. The Okonkwo Global Boardroom Reservation, 11th floor." Amaka blinked. "Do you have a booking reference?" "My name is on the reservation. Adiz Okonkwo." Amaka typed something, looked at the screen, then looked at Adiz again, longer this time. "That reservation is for a corporate event. Are you sure you have the correct hotel?" Adiz held her gaze. "I am sure." Amaka typed again, slower now, as if the act of typing was itself a kind of stalling. Then she picked up the desk phone, spoke quietly into it, and set it back down. "I've called the event coordinator. Someone will come to assist you. Please wait over there." She pointed toward a small waiting bench near the entrance, the bench where couriers sat, where delivery boys waited with packages. Not the plush seating area in the center of the lobby where guests were attended to with glasses of water and warm smiles. Adiz walked to the bench and sat. She had been sitting for 4 minutes when her cousin arrived. Chisholm Okonkwo swept through the lobby in a cloud of Chanel No. 5 and entitlement. She wore a red Valentino dress that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, and her heels clicked against the marble like punctuation marks in a sentence about superiority. 2 assistants followed behind her, both of them tapping furiously on tablets. Chisholm stopped when she saw Adiz on the courier bench. She stared. Then she turned to her assistants, said something, and one of them stifled a laugh. "Ada," Chisholm said, loud enough for the lobby to hear. "What are you wearing? Please tell me that is not what you plan to present yourself in today. There are investors in that boardroom. Real money is in that room." Adiz looked at her cousin calmly. "Good morning, Chisholm. You look like you came to fix the air conditioning." Chisholm shook her head. "I have told you 100 times that appearance matters. You represent this company. You represent our father's legacy, and you cannot walk into a room of serious people looking like..." "Like what?" Adiz asked, her voice still quiet. Chisholm waved a dismissive hand. "Like that." A small crowd had gathered nearby. Hotel guests, staff, a businessman on his phone who had lowered it without realizing it. A security guard had also appeared at the edge of the group, called perhaps by Maka's quiet phone call, and he was now walking toward Adiz with that particular walk that security men adopt when they have decided someone does not belong. "Ma," the guard said, reaching her, "I'm going to have to ask you to step outside. This is a private event venue, and we cannot verify." "Her name," said a voice from near the revolving door, "is on the reservation." Everyone turned. The man standing just inside the entrance was dressed in work clothes, dark trousers, a plain blue shirt with 2 buttons undone at the collar. He had been coming in to inquire about a guest pickup, and he had heard everything. He was not tall in a commanding way, but he stood the way a man stands when he has never been taught to make himself smaller for anyone. He was a cab driver. His name was Emeka Chukwu, and in that moment, he was the only person in the entire marble-floored, chandelier-lit, perfume-soaked lobby who had spoken on behalf of the woman in the ochre blouse. The security guard frowned at him. "Sir, this is not your concern. If you're about to remove someone without confirming who they are," Emeka said, "then it is everyone's concern." A brief, electric silence fell over the lobby. Adiz reached into her leather pouch and withdrew a slim card holder. She placed one card on the reception desk with a quiet tap of her finger. The receptionist picked it up, read it, and her face changed entirely. She typed quickly, scrolled, stopped. She looked up. She looked at the card again. "Ms. Okonkwo," Amaka said, and her voice had become a completely different instrument. "I sincerely apologize. The entire 11th floor has been reserved in your name. Our general manager is on his way down to escort you personally." Nobody in the lobby moved. Adiz took her card back, tucked it into her pouch, and stood from the courier bench. She straightened her ochre blouse. She looked briefly at Chisholm, who had gone the color of old concrete, and then she walked unhurried toward the elevator bank. She did not look back, but just before the elevator doors closed, her eyes found the cab driver near the entrance. He was already turning to leave, his errand seemingly forgotten. He did not look like a man who had done something heroic. He looked like a man who had simply done what was obvious. Something shifted quietly in Adiz's chest. She made a mental note of the cab company's number printed on the back of his shirt. The elevator rose. The lobby shrank below her, and Adiz Okonkwo, who had hidden 4.2 billion naira behind a simple ochre blouse, thought about a man who had defended her worth before knowing a single thing about her net worth. Above everything else she had seen and heard that morning, that one thing stayed with her. That one quiet thing. If this woman's silent strength stirred something in you, do not go anywhere, because next chapter is coming and the real story is just beginning. Subscribe to African Tales by Zion so you never miss a single moment, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded today. Never judge a book by its cover. Adiz had a driver. His name was Sunday, and he had been with her for 11 years. Reliable, discreet, a man who knew her schedule better than she did. His car was always clean, always cool, always waiting precisely where she needed it. Sunday never asked questions and never offered opinions, and for most of Adiz's adult life, she had valued those things deeply. But after the board meeting ended that afternoon, she walked out of Grand Meridian Hotel, told Sunday she would not need him, and looked for the orange cab parked 3 rows back in the lot. She found it by the company name on the rear bumper, Sunrise City Cabs, and the driver leaning against it with his arms folded, scrolling through something on a small phone with a cracked screen. He looked up when she approached, and something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps, or surprise. "You were in the lobby," he said. It was not quite a question. "You spoke up for me," Adiz replied. "I would like to take your cab." Emeka looked at her for a moment. Then he opened the rear door, without ceremony. "Where to?" "Lekki Phase 1. She paused. "Take the long way." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror as he pulled out of the lot. She was looking out the window at the traffic thickening on the road ahead, the Okadas weaving between buses, the hawkers moving between lanes with trays of plantain chips and sachets of water balanced impossibly on their heads. Lagos, performing itself as it always did, loud and relentless and alive. "You didn't have to speak up," she said after a while. "You didn't know who I was." "I still don't," Emeka said simply. "I know you had a reservation, and they were treating you like you didn't." That was enough. Adiz studied the back of his head. He had the kind of neck that came from real labor, strong, sun-darkened, the kind of hands on the steering wheel that had done more than drive. She noticed the engineering textbook stacked in the passenger seat footwell, thick, dog-eared, marked in blue pen. "Are you studying?" she asked. He paused. "Was. I have a degree in civil engineering from Unilag, but it didn't work out the way I planned." "What happened?" Another pause, shorter. "I refused to sign off on a building project I knew wasn't structurally sound. My supervisor wanted it passed. When I wouldn't, they found a way to let me go." He said it without bitterness, the way a man recounts a fact he has long since made peace with. "I started driving to pay my mother's medical bills. That was 2 years ago. I'm still driving. Adiz was quiet for a moment. Do you regret it? Refusing. No, he said immediately. Then, softer, that building would have had families in it. Children. No, I don't regret it. The city slid past the windows. Roadside stalls sending up little curtains of smoke. A group of school children in brown uniforms walking single file across a bridge. A woman selling fabric from a canopy stall. The cloth rippling in the wind like a row of bright flags. They talked the whole way to Lecky. Not the way strangers usually do. Cautiously, trading safe information, but the way people talk when something in the air gives them permission to be honest. He told her about his mother, Mama Emeka, who had been sick for 3 years now and who spent her evenings listening to gospel music on a small radio by her bed. He told her about his father, who had died owing a small loan to the local cooperative, and how Emeka had paid it back himself, every kobo, even though no one required him to. She told him nothing about herself. Not her name, not her company, not the meeting she had just come from, where 15 investors had fallen over themselves to shake her hand. She told him she liked books about forgotten histories, that she could not sleep unless there was rain, that she had been to 14 countries and felt loneliest in the nicest hotels. He laughed at that. A real laugh, not a polite one. That sounds expensive, he said. It is, she agreed. When they arrived at the gate of the address she had given, which was not her real home, but the guest compound she sometimes used for staff, he stopped to meet her and turned slightly in his seat. You never told me your name, he said. No, she agreed again, gathering her pouch. He nodded once, as if this were fair. Will you be needing a cab again? Yes, she said. Probably tomorrow. She stepped out. He drove away. And on the street where the bougainvillea bled pink over the compound wall, Adiz stood and watched the orange cab disappear into the evening traffic and felt something she had almost forgotten the shape of. Safe. She felt safe. Meanwhile, across town in a glass-walled apartment in Ikoyi, Chisholm Okonkwo sat cross-legged on a white sofa, phone in hand, uploading a video to her social media accounts. It was a 20-second clip her assistant had quietly captured in the hotel lobby. Adiz being directed to courier bench. Adiz in her simple Ankara blouse, sitting where delivery boys sat. Adiz looking utterly ordinary while the marble world glittered around her. The caption read, Our CEO arrived to a major investor meeting today. I'll let the video speak for itself. The Okonkwo name deserves better representation. Embarrassing. Who runs this company? Within the hour, it had 40,000 views. By midnight, Lagos was laughing. By morning, it was the talk of every business platform, every gossip blog, every WhatsApp group from Abuja to Port Harcourt. They called her the Ankara CEO. They made memes. They questioned her fitness to lead a company of that size. They said a woman who dressed like that could not possibly be serious about business. Not one of them asked what had happened in the boardroom. Not one of them knew that the investors had unanimously approved a 200 million naira expansion deal before the meeting was 40 minutes old. And not one of them, not a single person in all of Lagos, knew that the most important thing that had happened to Adiz Okonkwo that day had taken place in an orange cab on the long way to Lekki in a conversation she would think about for a very long time. The video just went viral, and all of Lagos is talking. But Adiz is not done, not even close. Subscribe to African Tales by Zion and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that what you see is never the whole truth. Next chapter is coming, and it will surprise you. 3 weeks passed, and Adiz kept taking Emeka's cab, not because she had to. Sunday the driver was still on payroll. The company car was still polished and waiting. But every morning when she needed to move through the city, and she moved through it often, preferring its chaos to the sealed-off silence of her office tower, she would call Sunrise City Cabs and request the same driver. Emeka, to his credit, never made it strange. He picked her up. He drove. He talked when she wanted to talk, and was quiet when she didn't. He never once asked her why she kept choosing his cab over a corporate car that was clearly available to her. He never pressed for her last name, her address, her story. He met her exactly where she presented herself, and somehow That was the most extraordinary thing about him. She learned more about him in those weeks than she had learned about most people in years. He woke at 5 every morning to check on his mother before his first pickup. He had a habit of keeping a small notepad in the glove compartment where he wrote down words. Not lists, not reminders, but words that caught his attention during the day. Ephemeral, fidelity, reckon. He said he learned one new word every day because his mother had always said that a man who grows his vocabulary grows his world. She told him, during one of those rides, that her father had died 2 years ago, that he had built his company from a single plot of land and a second-hand laptop, and that his last words to her, spoken in a hospital room with the machines breathing steadily around him, had been, "Find someone who loves a woman, not the wealth. That is the only love that will hold." Emeka had been quiet for a long moment after that. Then he said, "Your father sounds like he understood something most rich men don't." "He did," she said, "but he also built an empire, so take that as you will." Emeka had laughed. She had laughed too. And somewhere in that laughter, a line had been crossed. The invisible line between two people who are strangers and two people who are something else entirely. It was on a Thursday evening in the 4th week, when everything shifted. She had called him not for a work trip, but because she simply wanted to move through the city, for no reason in particular. He had driven her down to the waterfront near Apapa, and they had ended up stopping at a small roadside spot. White plastic chairs, a woman selling fried fish in EBA, a generator humming behind a curtain of black rubber, and eating together as the sun fell toward the water like something exhausted and golden. It was the most ordinary meal Adiz had eaten in years. She ate with her hands. He watched her do it with mild surprise before doing the same. They drank cold zobo from plastic cups, and a small radio on a nearby table played Old Fella, tinny and scratchy and perfect. "Can I ask you something?" Emeka said, setting down his cup. "You can try," she said. He was quiet for a moment. In the week she had known him, she had come to understand that his silences meant he was being careful. Not evasive, not fearful, but careful. He was a man who chose words the way other men chose tools, selecting the right one before he reached. "I don't know your last name," he started. "I don't know where you actually live. I don't know what you do for work, though I have some guesses." He paused. "But I know that you're the most honest person I have spoken to in a long time. I know that you see things, people, situations, with a clarity that most people spend their whole lives trying to find. And I know that when you laugh, which is not as often as it should be, it sounds like you mean it entirely." Adiz said nothing. The fella track ended. The radio moved to something softer. Emeka reached into his shirt pocket and produced something small. It was a ring carved from polished wood, dark, smooth, shaped imperfectly but with obvious care. He held it on his open palm and looked at it the way a man looks at something he knows is inadequate and has decided to offer anyway. "I made this with a piece of mahogany I found in my mother's compound," he said. "I know it is not the kind of ring anyone would expect. I know I am not the kind of man anyone would expect given." He gestured vaguely at all of her. "Whatever all of this is, I have a cab. I have debts. I have a sick mother and a cracked phone screen and a notepad full of words I am still learning to use." He looked up at her. "But I have never in my life met a woman who made me want to be completely truthful in every moment. And I think I would like to try, if you will let me." The waterfront was very quiet around them. Adiz opened her mouth to speak. Her phone rang. Not a regular call. The sharp, insistent ring of her executive assistant, Beezy, who only called at this hour if something was urgent. Adiz held up a finger one moment and answered, "Ma." Beezy's voice was bright with professional excitement. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but Forbes Africa just sent the final proof for your approval. They want to go to print tonight. The cover headline reads, 'Adiz Okonkwo, Nigeria's youngest female billionaire and the CEO quietly reshaping African tech. They need your sign-off before midnight.'" The words floated across the waterfront table between Adiz and the man who had just offered her a mahogany ring. Emeka heard every word. His hand, still open on the table with the small wooden ring on his palm, went very still. Adiz lowered the phone. She looked at him, and for the first time in all of their conversations, She did not know what to say. He looked at the ring. He looked at her. He looked at the ring again. "Billionaire," he said quietly. Not a question, not an accusation. Just a word he was trying to fit into a shape that had not existed 5 seconds before. "Emeka, I need a moment," he said, and he stood from a white plastic chair and walked to the edge of the water, where the last of the sunlight was breaking apart on the surface into 1,000 pieces of something that no longer held its shape. He proposed before he knew the truth, and now the truth has arrived and nothing will ever be the same. Do not miss what comes next. Subscribe to African Tales by Zion and bring someone along for next chapter, because this story is about to reach its turning point. The Forbes Africa feature dropped on a Friday morning. By 7 a.m., it was the most shared article on every Nigerian news platform. By 8, international outlets had picked it up. By 9, the photograph on the cover, Adiz in a crisp white suit, standing in front of the Orion Tech Global Headquarters Tower, was trending on every social media platform from Lagos to London. And then someone found the video. Chisholm's video. The 20-second clip of Adiz on the courier bench, in the Ankara blouse, in the lobby of the Grand Meridian, resurfaced with the ferocity of a wave that had been building unseen offshore. The same video that had drawn 40,000 mocking views 3 weeks earlier now drew 4 million, but the tone had reversed completely. The comments that had once read embarrassing, and who is this woman now read she knew exactly what she was doing, and this is the most powerful woman in the room, and not a single person could see it. The hotel's managing director issued a public apology within the hour, using the words deeply regrettable and comprehensive retraining of our staff in the same sentence. A mock of the receptionist, who had been photographed beside her desk in a screenshot from the video, requested 2 weeks of personal leave and did not come back. Chisholm's post was deleted, but the internet does not forget deleted things. Screenshots of the original caption, "The Okonkwo name deserves better representation," now appear beside the Forbes cover, side by side, the irony requiring no caption of its own. Journalists began calling the Orion Tech Communications office. Board members began sending carefully worded congratulatory messages. The cousin who had laughed in the lobby now sat in her glass-walled Ikoyi apartment, watching the thing she had built to humiliate her cousin become the very instrument of her own exposure. Because while the world was looking at Chisholm's video, the company's internal auditors had also been looking at something else. 3 weeks earlier, following an anonymous tip submitted to the company's ethics portal, a tip Adiz had quietly arranged after certain discrepancies caught her attention during the board meeting. A full audit of Chisholm's subsidiary had been initiated. What they found was precise, patient, and damning. 2 years of systematically redirected funds, falsified procurement records, and a series of payments to shell accounts traced back to a company registered in Chisholm's mother's name. The audit report landed on Adiz's desk on the same Friday the Forbes feature dropped. The timing was not planned, but it felt somehow like a completion. Adiz read the report once. Then she called her legal team. Then she called her board chairperson. Then she sat for a very long time by the window of her office on the 31st floor, watching the city below. The city that had laughed at her dress, that was now sharing her photograph. And she made a decision. She would not destroy Chisholm. She would simply remove her. Quietly, correctly, the way her father had always said you remove a broken part. Not with anger, but with precision. There was a knock at her office door. "Ms. Okonkwo." Her PA, Tund, opened the door halfway. "There's a Mr. Tade Balogun in the lobby. He says he is a personal acquaintance and doesn't have an appointment. He's been here for 40 minutes. He brought flowers." Adiz closed the audit report. "What kind of flowers?" "Imported roses. White. Very large arrangement." She almost smiled. "Send him up." Tade Balogun entered her office the way he entered every room, with the confidence of a man who had learned early that good looks and good tailoring could open most doors. He was handsome in an expensive, deliberate way, jaw sharp, watch gleaming, cologne arriving several seconds before he did. He set the roses on her desk and spread his hands wide, as if to say, "Here I am, aren't you glad?" "Ada," he said warmly, "you look incredible. The Forbes cover doesn't do you justice. But then again, nothing on a printed page ever could." Adiz looked at him. She had met Tade at an industry event 2 years ago, when Orion Tech was still quiet about its valuation. He had been pleasant enough, charming in the social sense, the kind of man who remembered your drink order and forgot your birthday. He had never once pursued her seriously. Until today. "Tade," she said, "how are you?" He launched into it. A carefully constructed story about how he had always admired her, how he had told people even before the Forbes cover that she was remarkable, how he truly believed, that a woman of her caliber deserved a man who could match her at every level. She let him talk. She watched his hands move. She watched his eyes travel, just once, to the window behind her and the skyline it framed. When he finished, she said, "Thank you for the flowers, Tade. I hope your drive back is easy." He blinked. "Oh, I thought perhaps we could have lunch." "I have a board meeting," she said. "Tun will see you out." After he left, she turned back to the window. The city moved below her, indifferent and vast, and she thought about a man who had not brought flowers, who had not come forward the moment a magazine declared her worth, who had, in fact, done the opposite, who had heard the truth and walked to the edge of a waterfront and gone very quiet. She had not heard from Emeka since that Thursday evening. His phone rang out when she called. Once, twice, 3 times over following days. She called the Sunrise City Cabs Dispatch and was told he had taken personal leave. No message, no note. Then on Saturday morning, a plain envelope arrived at the Orion Tech office reception, addressed in careful handwriting to the woman from the lobby. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It read, "I propose to a woman I respected. I do not know how to love a billionaire. I am sorry if I have made things complicated. Please forgive me. E." Adiz read it 3 times. Then she folded it and placed it in the inside pocket of her jacket, close to her chest, and went into her board meeting. In the boardroom, she presented the audit findings against Chisholm clearly, without drama, with every figure documented. She answered 3 questions. She recommended immediate suspension pending legal proceedings. The board voted. It was over in 40 minutes. Outside, Lagos continued as it always did. Enormous, chaotic, unaware of the quiet precision with which one woman was rearranging the pieces of her life. But the piece she most wanted to find had driven away in an orange cab and left only a wooden ring and a folded note in its place. "Emeka is gone." Tade showed his true colors. Chisholm is finished. And Adiz must now face the hardest question of all, not about her company, but about her heart. Do not miss the finale. Subscribe to African Tales by Zion and share this story with someone today. Next chapter is where everything finally comes home. On the morning of the most important shareholders' meeting of the year, Adiz Okonkwo opened her wardrobe and stood in front of it for a long time. The wardrobe was full. It held things that had been selected by stylists, things that had been gifted by designers who wanted the association, things that cost more than most people made in a year. There were suits in shades of charcoal and navy. There were dresses that moved like water. There were shoes that added 5 inches and an entirely different kind of authority. She reached past all of it. At the very back, folded neatly on a shelf she rarely visited, was the Ankara blouse, deep orange and brown, the one from the Grand Meridian lobby. She had washed it and folded it herself the evening after that day, the way you preserve something that has become meaningful. She put it on, plain black trousers, flat sandals, low bun, no pins. Her PA, Tund, knocked at exactly 7:45. When she opened the door, his expression moved through surprise and understanding and arrived, finally, at something that looked like admiration. "The shareholders will have opinions," he said carefully. "They always do," she said. "Let's go." She walked into the Okonkwo Global shareholders meeting the way she had walked into the Grand Meridian Hotel lobby, unhurried, undecorated, entirely herself. The room held 47 people, most of the men twice her age with watches that cost small fortunes. Every head turned. Every eye dropped a blouse, then back to her face, searching for the explanation. She gave them none. She sat at the head of the table, opened her folder, and began. She spoke for 1 hour and 20 minutes. She presented the annual performance figures, a 38% increase in revenue, 2 successful product launches, the approved expansion into 3 new African markets. She presented the audit findings against the former subsidiary director with the calm of someone describing weather. She outlined the restructuring plan for the affected division. She answered every question directly, without softening the difficult ones or inflating the good ones. When it was done, the oldest board member, a man named Chief Adeyemi who had known her father, leaned back in his chair and said quietly, "Your father would have been proud of you today." She thanked him. She gathered her folder. She walked out of the boardroom in her Ankara blouse and her flat sandals, and she did not look back. That afternoon, she went to hospital. She had learned 3 days earlier, through a contact at the Sunrise City Cabs Company who had remembered her previous calls, that Emeka's mother had been admitted to St. Nicholas Hospital. The admission had been arranged as an emergency. The bills, on a cab driver's income, would have been devastating. Adiz did not go in person to pay. She called the hospital's director of accounts and made the arrangements quietly, anonymously, under the name of the Okonkwo Family Foundation, a fund her father had established years ago for exactly these kinds of moments. No press release, no record that would find its way to Emeka. Then she drove to the hospital herself. Not to be seen, not to be thanked. Just to know, from the outside, that the building was there and the lights were on and the machines were breathing steadily inside. She found Emeka in the car park. He was sitting on the bonnet of his orange cab, which was parked near the rear entrance. He was not on his phone. He was not doing anything. He was simply sitting in the afternoon light with his hands resting in his lap, looking at the hospital entrance the way a man looks at something he cannot fix but cannot stop watching. She parked. She walked to him. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. He went still in a particular way he had gone still at the waterfront, not rigid with shock, but deeply, carefully quiet. "How did you know I was here?" he asked. "I didn't," she said honestly. "I came to check on your mother." Something moved across his face. "She doesn't know you," he said carefully. "She couldn't know to expect." "She doesn't need to know me," Adiz said. "I just needed to know she was all right." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the Ankara blouse. And something in his expression shifted. A recognition, a remembering. "You wore that the day I first saw you," he said. "Yes." "You're wearing it today." "Yes." He was quiet. Then, "I owe you an apology. I ran. When I heard that phone call, what your assistant said, I didn't know how to hold it all at once. I thought, this woman has a world I cannot enter. I thought I had made a fool of myself with a wooden ring." "The ring," she said quietly, "is the best thing anyone has offered me in a very long time." He looked at her. Emeka. She sat beside him on the bonnet of the cab. It was not the kind of thing she would usually do. But then, none of this was the kind of thing she usually did, and all of it felt more right than anything that came before it. My father had a driver. For many years, when my father was still finding his way, still driving second-hand cars and eating suya from the roadside, this man drove for him, not because he was paid well, but because he believed in what my father was building. They were friends. Truly, when my father became what he became, the driver's son was just a boy. She paused. My father used to talk about that driver. He said, if his son ever meets a woman worth loving, treat her with the same dignity you would treat anyone, regardless of what you see on the outside. Character is the only thing that holds. Emeka had gone very still beside her. What was the driver's name? He asked slowly. Emmanuel Chukwu, she said. Everyone called him Manny. The afternoon was very quiet around them. A bird moved somewhere above in the branches of a neem tree. A car passed on the road beyond the car park wall. Emeka's voice, when it came, was barely more than breath. That was my father. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Neither of them needed to. The city went on beyond the walls, enormous, indifferent, busy with itself. But in a hospital car park in Lagos, on the bonnet of an orange cab, two people who had been quietly moving toward each other across years neither of them understood, yet sat in the silence of a thing that had finally completed itself. Adiz reached into the small leather pouch she still carried everywhere. She produced a wooden ring. he had left on the table at the waterfront. She had kept it. Of course she had kept it. She placed it on the bonnet, between them. "You said you didn't know how to love a billionaire," she said. "I'm not asking you to love a billionaire. I'm asking you to continue what you already started. Loving a woman in an ochre blouse who takes long routes through traffic and can't sleep without rain." Emeka looked at the ring. He looked at her. He picked it up. "I make no promises I cannot keep," he said. "I have a sick mother and a crack phone and debts I'm still paying. I have no title and no tower." "I know," she said, "but I have never lied to you. Not once." "I know that too," she said. "It is why I am here." He turned the ring over in his fingers. The imperfect, careful, mahogany ring carved from a piece of wood found in his mother's compound. Then he looked at her with the same quiet clarity he had shown from the very beginning. When he had spoken up for a woman, he did not know in a marble lobby, because it was simply the right thing to do. "Then let's begin again," he said, properly, with everything on the table. "Yes," she said. She had hidden billions behind a simple dress. She had let the world laugh. She had watched the gold diggers arrive and the schemers fall, and the hollow ones reveal themselves one by one. And at the end of it all, in a car park on a Tuesday afternoon with the hospital lights on and the city moving beyond the walls, the only treasure she had ever truly been searching for was a man who had seen her before he knew anything at all. That was the only wealth that had ever mattered. That was the kind her father had meant. This story was never about money. It was about character, dignity, and the kind of love that sees past the surface and chooses what is real. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone, if it made you think, share it today. And if you have not yet subscribed, now is the time. African Tales by Zion is where stories like this live. More are coming. Don't miss a single one.